Welcome to the My Tech Toolbelt podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Brenda. And this is a podcast where we highlight educators who innovate, engage, and inspire through the use of technology. Thank you so much for joining us today for episode 36 of the My Tech Toolbelt podcast. Today, we had the opportunity to speak with Ed Campos Jr. from California. Ed shares with us about the many ways that he tries to make math less painful and more fun for his students. Ed has so many great ideas and resources to share with you. I sat in on one of his presentations recently, and let me just say that I wish I had had him for a math teacher when I was in high school. So, without further ado, our interview with Ed Campos Jr. Welcome, everybody. We are so excited to welcome Ed Campos Jr. from Tulare, California. I met him recently at the BOLD conference, and I was so impressed with him and his style of teaching that I just told him he had to come on to our podcast.
And that was only a few weeks ago, so we've been hounding him ever since.
I know.
And here we are.
Relentlessly hounding.
I appreciate that.
So welcome, Ed.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be here. I really appreciate it.
Ed, will you tell us a little bit about yourself, your own journey to kind of where you are today and what you're going to talk about? Set us up for that.
I live in Tulare, Central California. It's about an hour south of Fresno. And I've grown up around here. Went to school, UCLA. Didn't go to school to become a teacher. I was a software programmer out of college. So I did that for 3 years in the Bay Area. In Pleasanton, I worked for a company called PeopleSoft. And was a programmer for 3 years. I majored in math, but my last year of college, a buddy of mine just got me into programming. And he says, hey, we should take programming classes. And I said, I don't know what that is. I don't have a computer. And he said, I think you could do it because you're pretty good at this math stuff and you can understand this complex stuff. I think you can do the programming. So I became a programmer. Then Gabriel got me a job fixing laptops at the business school. So I learned all about hardware and software without ever having a computer. I don't think I got my first computer until I got my first programming job.
Wow.
That's so funny.
Because I just spent all my time in the lab. I got a programming job because I thought that's what I wanted, that made a lot of money, got to travel a lot. I did love the travel. And then after 3 years, I was like, I don't know if I really dig the job as much as I did the challenge of programming. I loved that challenge. And I think I realized that I really was enjoying the teaching more of it because I would be in the lab showing my friends how to do these complex problems that we were working on for the programming class. Same thing I would do with math. So after about 3 years, I just decided, I said, you know what, I think what I really like to do is teach. And I think that's what's going to, fill me and give me the reward that I want. So I moved back home, taught high school math. So I have 15 years teaching high school math. And then I started realizing I got a little complacent around year 9 because I was doing the same thing, and I had the same lessons. I had curated all of these PowerPoints for different algebra, for geometry. I thought I was pretty slick, proud of myself. I had gathered all of these PowerPoints onto this flash drive and I would share them with people. And it had nice transitions of, this is going to add 3 to both sides or some, do the same thing. And so I was pretty content with that. And then it got real stagnant and I was like, wow, this is kind of boring. And I actually thought about going back into the private sector because I was like, this is not my jam. It's kind of getting stale. And then a friend of mine said, hey, we should go to this ISTE conference in San Diego in 2012. I said, okay, that's cool. And she said, oh yeah, it's like $500. So I was like, yeah, I don't have $500.
That's a lot of money.
But we have a friend who's a former math teacher that we used to teach with, and she won the lottery, literally did win the lottery,
wow.
Sandy Carl.
Wow.
And so when she won, but she was always a great educator. She started a foundation called Passion in Education. So she sponsored us. She paid for us to go. So, shout out to Sandy Carl.
How nice.
Yes.
And said, hey, she's just really cared about teachers still giving back. So, those are the kind of people that need to win the lottery,
right.
And it was really good because she was an amazing hard worker before. She still is. So me and my friend Krishna went to San Diego, went to ISTE. And I think the first session, I looked at him, I'm like, it was like using your iPad and Apple TV as the Swiss Army knife in the classroom with this guy named John Carippo. And so it was like and so the first session I was always kind of a sit in the back kind of person, sit in the back of the conference, ready to just duck out if it wasn't that good, because I'd been to a lot of really bad PD. And then all I know is I saw this little lightning bolt of energy, like up and down, and with this iPad, and he's like, you do this, and then I'm like, holy cow, this is my jam right here. And so I like found myself walking up closer, taking a seat closer to the front. Ended up talking with John afterwards, and like, I need this setup. I'm going to buy an iPad tomorrow. What else do I need? These dongles, the VGA to. And John is just such an amazing human being, so passionate, so knowledgeable,
right.
And he was so warm and inviting. So, you live in Tulare Visalia? Yeah, I live in Central California. So he invited me to like CUE Rockstar camps and stuff. I didn't know about that. So, and then after that, I think every session in that ISTE was like a CUE person, which was like, I think it was Alice Keeler I did next, Nicole Delicio. I learned Instagram, and I learned what hashtags are from Nicole Delicio. Alice Keeler like helped me set up my first Google site. I didn't know who any of those people were, and I just went boom, 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 boom. So
your mind was blown.
My mind was blown, and all I had to do was stay in that one room. And I was like, oh, ISTE is amazing, but really it was CUE that was amazing, because I was just going in. So I always have to give props to that, because ISTE did introduce me to CUE, but I just stayed in that CUE room,
mm-hmm.
And those were the blurbs that stood out to me, and I was just learning so much, and I grew probably so much in that day. Definitely then got plugged into the CUE network and wanted to learn all the things, so, and at the time, Fresno Pacific and CUE had a partnership in like Innovative Educator Certificate, 18 units. So I got involved in that. I felt like I was so behind, I said, but I was ready to go. So I got involved. Alice Keeler was one of my instructors. She was the lead instructor managing the program at the time. So like being able to learn straight from Alice Keeler, like every week, all the time, is pretty amazing. That'll get you caught up pretty quick.
Yeah. Right.
So I was really fortunate, had some great instructors all through CUE. So I feel like I got the tech stuff up and going. I went from 0 to 100. Okay, I'm caught up. And then in my math classes, I started feeling like, hey, math is, how do we integrate the tech into the math? Because I was working at an independent study school at the time. And then I realized, maybe it's not even all about the tech, for math. Like it really is. It shouldn't, be all about the tech. It should be about whatever tool makes, the learning experience better. And so a couple of things happened. As I saw at CUE, I saw a poster session where a kindergarten teacher had put whiteboard paint on their door and on their tables. And so I was like, ooh, that's cool. Like a lot more whiteboard space, and, kids can draw he can leave a message for the kids on the door, but the kids can write on the door, making the door their own. They were doing the work on the tables. And I'm like, ooh, I like this idea. And then about the same time, I saw this documentary called Teach, hosted by Queen Latifah. And there were two main parts to this documentary. But one of the halves of the documentary was about this math teacher turned principal named Sean Kavanaugh in Colorado. And he decided to mentor one of his young math teachers and came up with this idea of 360-degree math. And so they have the website, 360degreemath.com. And what his idea for his math teacher was, if you have 36 kids, you're going to have 36 individual whiteboards. And the kids walk in, you greet them, hand them a marker, and then you give them a easy to solve, problem. They build up some confidence, get a quick win. And then I think, from what I know, because I've never actually been to one of Sean's trainings, I think it's like a micro lecture, and then students would do work, a lot of cycles of that. And so I was like, oh, that's cool. So really perfect timing. At the time, my boss, Heather Rocha, principal at the Independent Study High School, asked me to help to contribute to a grant she was writing for independent study charter schools. So we got a $250,000 grant. So I was able to redesign my classroom.
Wow.
She asked me, so what do you want for the classroom? I said, well, I want a lot of things. She said, well, put it all in there. Just justify it. So it's really crazy. I mean, but I put everything in there and I got everything. And it's really crazy when you get everything that you want. Wow. And you have this idea. So I had two 70-inch flat screen TVs on each corner, on the front two corners of my classroom. Idea paint, dry erase paint to paint all three walls that didn't have the front whiteboard wall. I had a Chromebook for each kid, an iPad for each kid, and a MacBook Air for each kid.
Oh my gosh.
I had 3 to 1.
3 devices to 1 kid, which is total opposite of what most people have.
Yeah. So And then I realized, like, wow, I've got to pilot all it. So it was like, okay, I got to use this stuff. I asked for it. So, I mean, I was like, I got the MacBooks, but everything had a purpose. The MacBooks I needed because I wanted Final Cut Pro in there, because I took a road trip with John Carippo to Apple headquarters and learned Final Cut Pro from him. You know, that's a whole other story right there. I should have got graduate credits for being in the car with John Carippo for 6 hours. Like, the amount of stuff I learned. And so, you know, I taught video editing at the school. I taught, you know, with the iPads that, you know, students were creating using the video editing there. I had them like part of my social media team. But with the math, so the whiteboards, all of the stuff that I got, if I had to choose one thing, I would just like keep the whiteboards and get the tech later. Because by far, the Whiteboard Walls was the game changer in my classroom. So as soon as I painted it, and then the kids, you know, when they realized they could write on the walls, it was like 100% engagement. Time would go by really fast. Kids were persevering, trying harder. They were talking more. The class always had a nice chaos sound. It was just really awesome. It was like music to my ears, though, because it was really loud, but it was always talking about math. And it was just created such a safe environment and started lowering the anxiety, I think, because I really started learning a lot about anxiety. And right when it was getting real stagnant, the teaching, I started thinking, like, why aren't these kids getting it? You know, I'm explaining it super well. I'm explaining it step by step, just the way I understood it and things like that. And I said, what is this look in their eyes that I see? And I had to really understand math anxiety, because I never had that, but I had public speaking anxiety. I had fear of speaking in public, so I could relate to that. I didn't want to torture my students. You know, I have a heart, and I don't want to confuse kids more. Our goal is to help them. But I realized once this happened, I was like, wow, I don't think there's hardly any anxiety in here anymore. It's just a safer environment. They don't have all these hangups about sitting in the middle of the room in a sea of your peers with all, you know, looking at who's doing what and the things that go on in an adolescent brain. You know, it was just a safe way to stand on the wall, and you're actually more focused, because the kids, they really, all they see is the wall, or maybe it's the person to the left of them, to the right of them, so they can get some starters. You know, they can, oh, I don't know how to start. Oh yeah, that's what you start doing. They can ask questions. Just, you know, it's a lot healthier. So that kind of started it. And I think I remember sharing like pictures on, and Carippo kept telling me, like, oh, you need to do a session on that. And I was like, really? That's a session? Like, people just whiteboards on the walls? And then he was like, no. He goes, you have to let them experience it. He goes, run them through it as kids, like if they were the kids. So I think I did that the first time I did that session was like at a CUE Rockstar STEAM or CUE Rockstar STEM camp. And the next day, I was getting tweets of these people that went out and bought the stuff and were doing it the next day. Like, it was by far, I was like, whoa. And I kept messaging Carippo. I was like, this is crazy. He goes, yep, that's what you need. He goes, keep doing that. So that's how I started. And then the ideas just evolved. Like, I, you know, remixed a lot of things. So the more I learned about like Common Core and the math practices, like that became a huge focus for my classroom, is getting kids to solve problems and persevere, construct arguments and critique the reasoning, you know, and all of those math practices, which are standards. And that's, for me, the answer to the question, like, why do I need to learn this stuff? Because kids always ask that about math. And because those are like life skills. They're the way mathematicians think, right? We construct arguments, we give reasoning abstractly, quantitatively. So that became a huge focus. I also started making it more collaborative. So whereas, like, I think the original 360-degree math is kind of like students work independently, I started learning more about, like, having them collaborate in pairs or groups of 3. And then a friend of mine from San Diego, John Beret, messaged me and said, hey, you should check out this guy from Canada. His research is very much kind of like what you're doing. So he recommended me to look up Peter Liljedahl's work on building thinking classrooms for problem solving. Peter, he teaches at a university in Canada on the East Coast. And he's done some really amazing stuff where he has these metrics where he measures, like, when you improve the whiteboard space, vertical whiteboard space, you get kids like start time, they start tasks faster, they ask more questions, they take more risks, things like that, because it's dry erase. Like, he has wonderful research paper on that. And one of the things he talks about is like grouping kids into 2 or 3 and only giving them like 1 marker, you know, so it forces the conversation.
Right.
And so I was like, oh yeah, I like that. but I actually give them more than one marker. So I let one person have like multicolors so they can visually show, but only one person controls the drawing and the rest have to ask questions. And so I kind of added that, and I give them roles. I remixed a lot of these little ideas in my style. And so like one person will be the resource manager. That's the first person. They grab the markers. One person is the questioner, the interrogator or something. Just like, tell me more about that. How did you do that? So that's an easy job. Like if you don't know, just ask questions. And then if there's a group of 3, I usually have that person be the consultant. Like they're a questioner, but they're also a consultant. So like after they've worked on the task for a while, if they're still stuck, I say, consultants, you're free to consult. And then they can roam around the class and get ideas from other groups. So I'm just kind of like, it's constantly evolving and just trying a lot of stuff. But I would say like Peter Liljedahl's research has definitely influenced me the most of taking this idea of, improving the whiteboard space. Also, when I first started, I was just doing the normal drill and kill worksheet problems, 1 through 37 odd, because that's what I knew. That's the way I was taught and stuff, and I was good at it. I received a lot of praise for being successful in that, so that's it's hard to unlearn a lot of that stuff, and
Right.
been indoctrinated into a system and, been given praise and gotten degrees for being good at that. But the more I learned about like rich tasks and really meaty math problems for problem solving, I said, oh, this is what I need to be doing more. So like learning a lot from Joe Bowler, who her mathematical mindset book and her online course, How to Learn Math for Students. I would have my students take that. I took that, the How to Learn Math for Teachers, the free MOOC from Stanford that she had out, and really helped me wrap my mind around this shift that we were moving in Common Core. So that was really awesome for us as a math department at that school and got us like focused on the right things. So I started researching rich tasks, and luckily the internet is awesome and Twitter is amazing because there's a bunch of people that share stuff. So I would find all these, 3-act math tasks and visualpatterns.org by Fawn Nguyen. So all these really great visual ways to teach math and have conversations. So I started doing more of that. And then one of the characteristics of his building thinking classrooms is he talks about have random visible groups, which means that, switch up your seating chart and your grouping as much as you can, as much as possible. And he says, because people and students get complacent sitting in the same groups, and, it just breeds bad behavior. I mean, just an adult sitting with other teachers and, my friends and sitting in the same staff room or something, staff meeting.
Absolutely.
And so he said, if you switch it up, then you're going to keep cultivating the enthusiasm to working with other people. Right. And so I go, oh, okay, I really like that, but how do I do that? And then so I was looking online on these discussion threads and like, how do I do this? I love this idea, but my grading program was not that good to switch random grouping and stuff like that. So I would see people online that were using like playing deck of cards, and they would have cards at each station, but then they would hand cards out to kids. I'm like, yeah, that's cool, but knowing my students, some of them are going to throw those cards away, or I'm going to lose the cards, So then I ended up finding this tool called Flippity, flippity.net. And I think like probably one of the best things I've used in the last like 3 years is Flippity. Like it is, and it blows people's minds that have never seen it. So it's like, whatever my session starts off as, it ends up being like, oh, I love that session you did on Flippity. I go, that wasn't actually, that wasn't the focus, but I'm glad you got one thing from it. But it's such a great tool, so it's like a bunch of spreadsheet templates that somebody who's like Alice Keeler Smart wrote a bunch of Google script behind the scenes to turn the templates into apps, and there's like the Jeopardy one, the flashcards, but the one that I use is the random student selector. And it lets you have a wheel. I call it the wheel of misfortune. So instead of the popsicle sticks, you got a wheel. But the best part is you can group kids into random groups of 2, 3, 4, 5. And so I would do that like every day, all the time. And I noticed, because I think I first learned about it, and it was like April. It was late in the school year. And so I was doing it every day. And I would actually change my seating chart every day. So I had groups of 4, like pods. And the kids would come in. And they were like, where do I sit? Because they were missed today. And one of the kids would go, it doesn't matter. He's going to switch up the seats anyways. And I was like, you darn right. And then I would switch up the partners, and the kids would be like, Mr. Campos, who's Maria? And I'm like, dude, you don't know who Maria is? It's like May. It's
right.
weird. But I started thinking, I go, you know what? That's my fault. I'm the coach of the team.
Right.
And if my team doesn't know each other and I'm trying to win, that's my fault. So that, like, I was like, you know what? I'm going to totally build in, these icebreakers with Flippity and get to know you so that we've got camaraderie. We can do that team building, So I'm honest and I own up to my stuff, but I realized, like, all right, now I'm going to use that tool. I think that's why it's such a powerful tool. It's so easy. Just bookmark that site. You have one Flippity for each one of your classes. It doesn't take you that long to do it. Switch it up. Have them talk about what was your favorite movie? What's the favorite, what's the funniest movie? Do some little stuff like that, because that social-emotional learning piece and empathy for each other is pretty important. That's where it's headed. That's kind of what I've been doing. And then I add like my music, I
was going to say, Brenda told me, so she got to go to your session and I did it. Yeah. And she was like, there was music playing and the music changed and it meant to do something different. So tell me how you utilize that, because I think that's really cool for, teachers who aren't really integrating that into their classrooms. Why would they do that and how was it impactful?
Yeah, so like I said, this is all a remix of stuff. Everybody has their own personality and stuff. And I went to a session by my friend Matt Vaudry, and he's down in SoCal. And he did a session on music cues and about how you can save, like he did a really awesome way of like calculating how many instructional minutes you can actually save by having music cues for transitions and for different activities and things like that in your classroom. And where the songs have these themes to them or something. And I was like, ooh, I like that. Because he talked about really like once you get into the April, May, you've said the same things over and over and your kids are not listening to you, So given that that, what can you do to prevent that? And he's like, yeah, just, that it's time to clean up when I press this song, it's time to stop the discussion, when I do this. So I was like, ooh, this is good. And Matt even had it clipped down. He has a Google Drive folder where he has like these songs clipped to like this place for 20 seconds, this and that. I don't have it down as much. And I wanted to use my own songs. So like I just created a Spotify playlist called Music Cues, and I'll share the link,
Awesome.
So it's like different things. Like when I have students get up to work on the wall, I play Bob Marley Get Up, Stand Up. So the kids always know. And, when they're working on the wall, I'll play like Oasis Wonderwall or something like that. And then when they have to transition to move to left, I say move to left 2 spaces, 2 whiteboards. And then I play Beyonce's, to the left. I mean, and
I love that. I love that.
And then they do a gallery walks after because whenever I do the rich math tasks, I have them work, and then I do Beyonce, to the left. They analyze some student work, write down some questions, and then I have them do a gallery walk, and I'll play like Aerosmith, Walk This Way with the Run DMC one, or like the Bangles, was it Walk Like an Egyptian or something?
Right. I love that.
And so I have this ready to go, and it's kind of in the sequence. My playlist is in the sequence of the way I play them. Most proud of this one is when I bring a discussion back. I play Welcome Back Kotter theme song.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good song.
And they don't know where that's coming from because
they don't know where
never seen that before.
And I do it in PD, and teachers are like, oh, that's a good song. Yeah, it's like Welcome Back, welcome, right? And so I really like that one. And then my students, after a while, they're like, oh, I see what you're doing here. To the left.
Yeah.
I see. And then they're like, pretty good, Mr. Campos. Pretty good. I was like, yeah, we're not bad. They were like, so what about when we work in groups, you play Come Together by the Beatles? I go, done.
Okay. So they're coming up with some.
Yeah. So then
cool.
I said, you know what? I'm going to put the playlist in Google Classroom. It's a collaborative playlist on Spotify. Add something as long as it's appropriate.
Right.
Add something. Tell me what it's for. Or we should be able to figure out what it's for. And let this become your playlist. So you guys are creating the soundtrack for your classroom.
Wow. Very cool.
So they like that. And plus, like, to go with the whole anxiety thing, music just like decreases the anxiety.
Right.
One of the best technology pieces I've ever bought is my Bluetooth speaker. I'll be honest. And I paid like $200 for this Bose SoundLink Mini 2. And I did it because I have anxiety of public speaking. And I get real nervous right before I have to present. Luckily people give you the nudge, and, the people in CUE are super supportive. So I would always get nervous when someone was presenting right before me, because I was like, hurry up, get out of the way. I got to set up. I got to plug my dongle. I got to do this. You're going to make me rushed. And in my mind, there's all this really panic attack type of stuff going on. So I bought the speaker because I wanted to calm my nerves. And I also wanted a music cue that person before me to be like, hey, dude, You got to go. Like,
that's right.
Kind of like,
Time's up.
like the Oscars, like when the Oscar song starts playing, you said your thank yous. So in a nice way, because I'm not a jerk, but I wanted, so as soon as someone is done, I wait and they have their conversations, and then I start playing my music and I start going around, and then they're like, oh yeah, I got to get out of here. So that helped me, and I get to dance around a little bit, calm myself before I present. And then people walk it in. It kind of sets the tone for fun almost. It's like one of my credential teachers, Suggestipedia is like setting the environment for like the context of the activity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's like hitting all of the senses for the activity. So almost like setting the mood for learning is what I think about it. Mm-hmm. And you do that when you're on a date. You set the mood and you light the candles. And what is the mood for learning? Like, what do you want that to be? Do you want more energy? Do you want less energy? The lighting. Right. So he talked about when kids walk into the classroom after lunch, it's a really rowdy bunch all the time. You dim the lights and then you play some soft music. So they're like, they walk in, hey, oh, and then they're like, oh shoot, it's like I'm in church. I gotta, okay, all right, I'll talk to you after class. So, or if they're like lumps on a log and there is no energy, crank the energy up. So the playlist, like, boom, it serves two purposes. Like, all right, let me calm you down. Mm-hmm. I like playing the Westworld soundtrack, the piano. It's a super wonderful soundtrack of piano renditions of current songs. It's real calming. So I play that one to calm the room down. Or then I have a playlist of I call it like my Prezzo music playlist. It's safe, really classic songs, that everybody likes. And I'll share that one too. Like, I've done sessions where I do that, and I, with the music cues, and everybody's like, oh, that's awesome. And I had one teacher, she saw me present one week, and then I was presenting again the next week, and she was there again. She said, hey, she goes, I just want to let you know, as soon as I went to your session, I went home and I bought a Bluetooth speaker, and I'm using that playlist. And she goes, and I know you're saying like it's for the kids. She goes, but I just like listening to music.
Right.
Too. And I was like, that's true, because if you're not having fun, what are those kids gonna?
Right.
You're contagious. Your energy is contagious. So it starts with you too. We can't be a little selfish about that. It's like, I want to have fun at work. I want this to be a good environment so that the kids can feed off of that. You're not going to learn from a miserable teacher. So.
Well, and I want to. It's interesting that you said that, because you circle back to. I want to go back to something you said earlier. Right around year 9 or year 10, you were feeling very stagnant, very bored, maybe not effective. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but just you were getting to the point of like, I might leave the profession because, and I'm thinking like your students must have felt that as well, because you were now, I mean, you had it down, right? You had these PowerPoint presentations that were on, but you weren't as enthusiastic about it. They weren't. Then you got this booster shot of like CUE. I'm going to call it the CUE booster shot.
Yep.
Through organizations like ISTE and CUE, and you were able to just really transform your teaching, just spice it up to where the kids are probably so engaged and much more enthusiastic. You're having fun. They're having fun. And so I'm curious, what happened to your PowerPoint presentations? Where did they go?
I think I gave them, like right before that, I was trying to mentor a young teacher that he was coming, and I gave them copies. I used to give copies. It's like, oh, I got you. He was real stressed out. But yeah, I haven't used those PowerPoints.
No, you don't need them, right? Because you have all of this other material, in your tool belt. That's why we call this MyTech tool belt, is because as a teacher, you need to build up your belt, right? You need to be able to say, there's a time to calm down, and we're going to do this activity. There's a time to crank it up, and we're going to do this activity. And this all really came from, kicked off with John Carippo, and then you were introduced to the 360 math. Then you started using music and the research of this randomized grouping. What came out of that? There was another step in your evolution, maybe, or is there? Because I have that you were using the Bootstrap math. Is it Bootstrap math?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, and how did that come in your journey?
Yeah. So my current job, I'm recently out of the classroom. I was teaching math at the Independent Study High School. I taught that video elective, like I said, and then I taught a computer science class. The first computer science class I taught there was a C++ class, because I was, like I said, I was a programmer before. It was like an online, one of the canned programs. I'm not going to say the name, but it was plug them in, have them watch the videos, they take the test, and then like towards the end of the year, one of the kids was like, "Hey, Mr. Campos, what's a Boolean?" And I was like, "Oh wow!" I go, "This program doesn't teach you what a Boolean." I go, yeah, that's not a good program. We're going to use something else, So I started looking for different programs. I did an hour of code, the first year that they did it. And I was like, yep, this needs to happen. So my kids loved it. We had a huge hour of code thing going on that week. And then I said, okay, I need more. And block-based coding is cool, but I was teaching high school. So I said, I used to actually, do code in C++ and JavaScript and stuff. So I said, I want to find something where I can teach these kids like some upper level text-based computer science. And then through code.org, they had a page and I recommended third-party curriculum, things like that. So I was reading through it and I was like, this one. And I saw one that said Bootstrap, coding video games with algebra. And I said, oh, video games, coding, and algebra. Those sound like three things that I want to, So I ended up calling the person, the contact there. His name was Emmanuel Schanzer. He's now my boss. And I asked him at the time, hey, I would love to come to a training. And he says, oh, we got one coming up in San Francisco. Come on up for free, And I was like, cool. Nice. So I went to that training and it blew my mind. I was like, man, this is so important right now to give kids, another way to learn math, another way to learn algebra with a super relevant skill, super rich with the math practices and all of these teachable moments, to persevere and stuff. And so I came back and I told my principal, who was super supportive, Heather, I said, I have to teach this class. I said, I have to. I'm not asking you. I'm telling you, like, I have to teach this class. I go, it's going to be beneficial. She was like, yeah. She goes, that's how you sound like you really dig it. And so I started teaching it. My students created, the curriculum is you're creating a video game using algebra. So the kids are learning about the coordinates, about geometric translations, reflections, rotations, dilations by coding these images and having them transform with the code. Learning how to program their own functions. So, because algebra is a very abstract concept, but when you have hands-on experience with it, you can test your inputs and your outputs and it gives you immediate feedback. So my current boss now, Emmanuel, created the program because he realized that he didn't really understand functions until he was a programmer. And I said, yeah, that makes sense. So he created this. He's a brilliant guy. And so the kids learn like about distance formula, all of these things, the way things collide in video games, and they get to program their own functions. And then there's a really visual way of programming the order of operations into it, which I think is the genius, one of the many genius things of the curriculum, because the order of operations is a literacy piece that kids don't get a lot. And because they think, oh, I just need to give you an answer, and that's what math is. Give you a number. Is it that it? I'm going to take these two numbers. I'm going to put them together. There's so much misunderstanding when it comes to the order of operations that although I'm a high school teacher by trade and that's not my standard, you're always spiraling back to order of operations because that's like learning how to read first, like learning how to read the math, And so I started sharing out stuff on Twitter and presenting at CUE on Bootstrap, showing the video games that my kids were creating, having the testimonials from the kids, from the parents, about how their kids were understanding why math is important now, why all of a sudden my Emmanuel, he was like, hey, he goes, would you ever consider coming to work for us? And I said, for who's us? I didn't know. So for the Bootstrap team, he was like, yeah, and I didn't know it was based out of Brown University at the time. So I said, oh, so I would work for Brown University? That's an Ivy League. I go, the Ivy League school? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, that's kind of cool, so because of CUE, because of a platform to share great stuff that kids were doing, I got this job offer. So now I do that 75% of the time. It's kind of like my perfect job because I get to do all of these great things, computer science, which I'm passionate about, right. Math, and I still get to work with CUE as a lead learner. And then I have my own brand and consulting that I started when I network with people and they want to bring me out for math or technology or coding. Like I just recently spent a whole day at a local high school with one teacher because they brought me out. They wanted me to help them plan their computer science curriculum for 6th, 7th, 8th grade. Yeah. And they're like, we don't have it, but we know we need it. You want to do it? And I'm like, okay. So I did that. And that was really fulfilling, to me. So now, and I live local, so I can come back and visit and come in there and follow up with that teacher and support them. Yeah. So I get to, I don't know what my job is, but whatever it is, it's the perfect job for me. It's a lot of things. It's like a big pie chart, but.
That's okay. I think it's fulfilling for you.
Yeah.
You had tons of experience in the classroom with kids, and you're never saying you're not going back there. I mean, that's always an opportunity in the future. But right now, you've moved into a space where you're taking the things you're passionate about and spreading the knowledge to the teachers that need it. And that's where I think, it's interesting, because my question that is coming next is like, okay, so you've been doing this, you've been doing Bootstrap and the 360 math, and now you're getting the word out to other teachers, because I've been in the tech industry in probably close to 20 years, I think, and I don't know that I've ever heard about it until Brenda said you had done the session at Bold. And I was like, I work with math teachers all the time. I've never heard of this. We talk about hour of code and 20% time, project-based learning. I mean, all this stuff. And I'm like, why have I not heard of this? And it's because there's so much out there, right? Yeah. That, the work that you're doing and sharing this amazing piece of software, I guess, is really important, because otherwise teachers don't know about it. So right. Getting out to these platforms, and, we're international now on this podcast, so it's going to, nice. It's huge that you can take this everywhere across the country and talk about what is this? Why is it important? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You talked about the literacy standards, the math standards, the computer science standards. I mean, all of that is connected into these programs that you've been talking about today.
And the social-emotional.
Oh, well, that's huge. I mean, thank you for being, an advocate for that, the social-emotional learning, because that's huge for teachers right. as well, to kind of understand that the way you learned, and you articulated this so beautifully, the way you learned is not necessarily the right way for us to teach. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it certainly wasn't the way I learned. I had total math anxiety, and that's what I loved about going to your session, was now all of a sudden I'm not here in my little isolated chamber at my desk thinking I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. Now I'm with a friend, even though I don't know this person, right? But now all of a sudden this is my best friend in the whole wide world. Yep. And standing up, I think, is another thing that just helps just your vision of like what is the best way to learn. Because I remember sitting there in class, especially in math, thinking, the teacher's up there explaining everything, and I'm sitting there with my head bobbing up and down of, yep, I get it. And then I go home and do my homework, and I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Yeah. No idea.
That doesn't help to look at your notes, because there's nothing of importance.
Because I was getting it in class when he or she was explaining. Yes, absolutely. Sure. Okay, yeah, I got this. And then get home and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And so I think by doing it actually in class, on the wall, and going through exercises instead of just sit and get, right?
And talking about it. Because for me, it's like the magic is in the conversations. Now it's a safe space to talk and ask the questions and clarify things. And one of the I survey my kids a lot. One of the powerful tools that I use too is I like the simple tools, the music, the Bluetooth, Flippity. Just Google Forms, anonymous surveys are like my favorite thing in the world, because that's how you're really going to find out if what you're doing is good or if you need to change some stuff up, And for your organization, if you want to find out what the pulse is of your organization from district to school to classroom, then, ask people anonymously.
Anonymous is key.
And I would ask my kids, because I started having this hunch about, the math anxiety. And so I started surveying them a lot about that. Like 75% of my students said they didn't have math anxiety, that I would survey. That's
wow.
And I sent the same survey out on Facebook to my adult friends. 75 to 80 did have math anxiety,
Wow.
And I would talk about what are the things in the classroom that help decrease the anxiety. They're writing on the boards, writing on the desks. The music, they tell me the music. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep the music then, one thing I liked, that one comment, I think it was, I don't know, someone said it. They said, I like when you play the music because it frees me up to talk more, because no one else can hear what I'm saying.
Right.
It kind of makes it's like me singing in church, because that's the only time I sing is in church, because you don't want to hear this voice, solo. You don't want to hear this do a solo. But that's what it is too. It's like, okay, I'm not afraid to toss my question out, because it's just me and my partner, or me and my two partners, So that's why the music I love the music piece. It's just music brings people joy. Like, what does Bob Marley say? One good thing about music, when it hits, you feel no pain.
Mm.
And there's been a lot of pain in math class. So at the very least, like, you play some jams and let kids, hum along while they're doing some math work. There's some simple things that you can do.
And then they look forward to actually going to class.
Yeah.
I mean, that's half the battle, right? Instead of dread. Ugh.
But I believe, I can't quote it, but I'm sure there's research on there about music and memory and music and retention. Just like like with writing something down helps you retain it. I feel like music, because there's been whole studies done where like kids that sing as they're learning,
while they're learning,
it helps them retain. So I would think that the music might actually be something like, like a memory trigger or an academic. I can't quote any studies, but maybe some of our listeners who know can chime in on that. But I would imagine that there's something in the brain chemistry that's happening. And right now there's a lot of people this generation of students that they're wearing their earphones while they're doing their homework, or they're just listening to music. For me, that doesn't work really well. I have to have like piano or something very, very, very light in the background, or nothing at all. But I notice just in my own children that they want some background noise playing. And so I think that's just evidence of it's helping them maybe focus.
Right. And then each student is different, or each person is different.
I don't know that, like, for me, that doesn't work. Right. But for my children, when I
do like long, like a lot of computer work, I listen to, I can't hear words in my music. I have to have instrumentals or hip hop beats or, the Westworld piano soundtrack. But like for a social space like that, and I've heard people say, oh, like you shouldn't have music with words, like that's distracting. And it may be true. I mean, I don't know if someone shows me that research, but I really just do it for the little smirk that I get from a kid when they're like, I see,
Yeah, I got you.
That's all I do it for, is like, you get, I know what you're doing.
Well, you're not playing like the whole song. You're playing just snippets. It's a cue.
Just snippets,
It's a transition. You're hitting all the levels of SAMR. You're hitting all the C's, the 4 C's. You're hitting, the Bloom's taxonomy of creation of something. And is this collaborative when they're working on this, or is this independent when they're doing
Bootstrap? With Bootstrap, we believe in pair programming. So it's very much like the way I run my math class is the way that we, do our PD. We use tons of whiteboards also. I'll actually have to give a plug to a really affordable way to improve the whiteboard space in your classroom too, because I used to, not everyone has the grant and, 3-to-1 devices and to paint, so I started buying, there were these GoWrite sheets, GOWRIT. And I have, I used to buy these all the time. They were, and I'll put a little bit.ly, GoWrite WB. That's a link to like an Amazon page where you can buy, it's a set of 25 sheets for like $80. And I used to buy those all the time for my sessions because they're really durable. They erase beautifully. They have one side. But then I was in
and they Washington, just stick to the wall.
Like you tape them up or something like that. Yeah, they're not like that. But I use like blue painter's tape, stuff like that. But when I was in Washington, D.C. last year for the NCTM conference, I met a company called Whitebook, WIPEBOOK, and they're from Canada, and they have a similar product that I've been using now. So now they came up to me and they said, "Hey, do you do sessions like this a lot with your whitebooks or whiteboards and stuff?" And they said, "Here, check out our product." And they said, "If you wouldn't mind, if you like it, we'd love to supply you with whitebooks wherever you present, as long as you just give them away to the teachers at the end of the session."
Oh, how nice!
I'm like, that sounds like a great deal, because I've been buying these myself and give them away anyway. So I spend like $80 every time I present, but I like to, my grandma taught me to be generous. So I like to give back, and, that lets me have a foot in the classroom still, so I get to influence whiteboard space and decrease math anxiety, So Whitebook has a great product where it's 2 by 3 foot poster size, blank on one side and grid on the other.
Mm-hmm.
So for graphing, they're wonderful.
Oh, nice.
And they actually have a Whitebook scan app where you can program up to 10 different Google Drive or Dropbox folders. So you can have a different notes folder for different periods. And then you can just boop, 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 take the pictures, queue them up, and then send them to your folders. So I've been using those, and Whitebook has been amazing. And now they even give me a discount code to share with teachers. So
nice.
The set of 10 Whitebooks is like $54 or something like that. So they end up being like $5.40 a sheet, which is still good. They gave me a discount if you buy in bulk. So if your district buys 6 sets or more, you can get 45% off.
Wow, that's huge.
So, and the discount code is my last name, Campos, Campos. So, and because if you're going to buy 3 sets, that's the same price it would be to buy 6 with my discount code. So I like sharing that out. They've been really, really helpful. Because the conversation, how that came about, I have to share this. They said, "Oh, well, we can give you this." I was like, I'm okay. I don't need to make money off of teachers. I go just give my 10% to the teachers and make it 25%. I said, I'll make money off of districts. I'll charge the districts, but not the teachers themselves, because I know how that is. And then they were like, oh, wow. They were like, that's really good. So then they said, well, how about this discount? And they gave me the 45% discount. And then so what they've also helped me do is they were curious. They said, well, how are you using these sheets with your computer science, with your Bootstrap stuff at Brown? And I said, we have the people brainstorm and map out, and they draw these, draw the diagrams before they code. And I said, and, sometimes we have them write, the code syntax on there, and that's a lot of work. And so he asked, well, would you be interested in like a custom dry erase sheet that has like the coding syntax on there? And I was like, oh my God. So,
wow.
So because programming is hard with the syntax, you forget a semicolon here, you forget a parentheses. So I sent him, there's a way that we write functions in Bootstrap for the language. And so I sent him, it's a template that we use in our workbooks. But I said, that would be really awesome to have a template that we don't have to write all this stuff, and they could just fill it out and get a lot of reps, in practicing writing these functions, so that, becomes second nature. They've created one version of, it's called the design recipe. It's our structure and the way we program functions in this language racket that we scheme. And they're going to create another one coming up soon for a different language that we use with some of our other curriculums. So they've been really helpful. I mean, and then so we're like in our Bootstrap sessions, everybody's up doing the stuff on the walls and writing the program before they get back to the computer, so it's all affecting the same. It's just good practice. I think we're trying to make workshops and classrooms more fun and less anxiety.
Right. And it seems like, coding. Yeah, that's so nice that they're working with you and seeing what you actually need.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They're amazing. They're Canadian. So I tell them, it's Toby and Frank. I tell them they're my the two best Canadians since Bob and Doug McKenzie. I don't know if you get that joke, but do you remember Strange Brew from back in the day? So
take off, eh?
That's the only thing I knew about Canada before that. I was like, all right, you hoser, thanks for the whiteboard. So yeah, they're really awesome.
That's awesome. Well, I'm super excited about the work that you're doing, the work that you're continuing to do with teachers, and the teacher trainings that you're doing using Bootstrap, and just spreading the word on the Math 360 and music and whiteboards and just
all of it.
All of it. I mean, all of it just
things
is really important together for teachers to kind of understand, how do we reach our students? Well, you need to listen to what their needs are. And if any teachers out there are feeling, kind of in that space of maybe I could do more, what is it? Like, check out some of the resources on our website and our show notes that Ed has graciously shared with us. And we can hopefully kind of just give our teachers, our listeners, a shot in the arm of inspiration. And if they try just one thing in the classroom, what would you say that would be? You originally said whiteboards.
Yeah, I would say that.
That and music are probably the two easiest things to start, right?
It's pretty easy. I think that and some music, and then that's a good, like, low floor, high ceiling way to start improving, because teaching math is hard. And I think, like, math teachers, we've gotten a bad rap, but we've been indoctrinated into the system for the longest time. And to do this whole 180 on what Common Core and math should be, it's really hard for a lot of folks. So we can't fault these people. But a good start is, hey, just like me, you can do those same problems just on the wall. And that's the way I started. And then play a little music, lower the stress, and then learn more about richer tasks. We have to give patience to people and meet them where they're at, just like we want to meet our students where we're at, and can't expect a whole math department to change overnight to be this, what we expect it to be. So it's going to take some time, but we're willing to put in the work.
That's awesome. And I think it's really neat with the whiteboards too, is somehow it's like not permanent. So it's like easily you can change it. And it's not, like you're sitting at your desk and you're on pen and paper or computer, and, it's still very fluid when it's up on a whiteboard. And I think it's easier to make mistakes, and it's okay. Right?
Yeah. You take more risks.
Yeah.
Instead of like, it's permanent in pen.
Right.
And stuff like
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's so cool. Well, so if people want to get a hold of you, which I'm sure they will now.
Yeah.
What is the best way that they can contact you?
Yeah. So I'm on Twitter at Ed Campos Jr. And also on Instagram. Like, I probably have the most pictures of my classroom going a couple years back. If people want to take a look at that. It's also at Ed Campos Jr. On Facebook is Eddie Campos Jr. And then I have a blog that I don't keep up as much, but I'm updating it pretty soon. It's edcamposjr.com. And also, I would like to share one more thing, since it's the audience of teachers. And because you guys mentioned that you're going to be traveling soon.
Yes.
Yeah. Where to, might I ask?
All over.
All over.
Shannon's good.
I'm doing a Europe trip where we'll be pretty much Europe is where I'm going to go. That's my this year. Next year we're doing a cross country trip. Yeah, but this year was Europe. So, and then you're all over.
Just different places. Back
California.
in Mammoth, but hopefully Hawaii this year.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Hawaii. Yeah.
Nice.
We're trying to coordinate with conferences too. Wherever there's a conference, can we get to?
That's a good idea. Yeah.
We're missing ISTE this year. This is the first year that we're missing ISTE, but it's back in California the following year. Yeah. I believe it's in Anaheim. So
very excited.
Very cool.
So we're looking for that.
So I was asking about the travel because I love to travel. I get to a lot with my job, especially growing up in a small town. I think, just everything is new. I'm always a tourist, I think, and I don't mind that. But about 6 years ago, I started traveling with a teacher travel organization called geo.org, GEEO.org.
Okay.
It's Global Exploration for Educators Organization.
Is this the one Christina Ishmael was telling us about too?
Yeah. Christina went to Egypt with Stacy Cool, Lisa Nowakowski, and a bunch of other CUE folks. And I was supposed to go on that one, but I had I had to spend that money on car issues. But I'm going to be going. So they have like 20 to 30 trips. I'm on the board of directors. Actually, I've traveled with them 2 or 3 times, and then so I went to like Costa Rica, then Peru, hiked Machu Picchu. Then I spent like a month in Southeast Asia, going to Thailand, Laos, Vietnam.
Wow.
And then I spent like a month in China, and they're pretty affordable. Geo partners with G Adventures, which is a worldwide travel agency, and they customize the trips to be more teacher focused. And you'll always do a homestay. So you'll stay with like a village in the Andes and help prepare. Yeah. So like when we went to Peru, we stayed in the Andes mountain with this village with the Quechua family, and helped them cook deer, help them shuck corn out in the field, and then help take their alpaca scarves and all the things down to the market. Like, spent 2 days with the family, and it's built on sustainable tourism. So the money that you spend by staying with those families goes into building schools, paved roads to get better access for those villages. And it's really awesome, just way to see the world, and it's just teachers. You don't take your kids with you. This is a nice vacation time for teachers, but you also create an action plan to say, okay, what's the experience I'm going to bring back to my kids? Am I going to have a cooking class to teach them how to make some Thai food and stuff like that, or talk about the music or the history, or create math lessons based on my trip and experience. So it's pretty amazing. I always like to share it.
That's awesome.
And
you're all in with like staying with the families. I think that really adds another element.
Yeah, and you always do a school visit too. So there's 2 pieces of it that make it. So you visit a school, you usually pitch in like your 12 to 15 teachers on the trip. You pitch in like $20 to $50 each. You give all that money to the school so they can buy supplies or technology or something like that. You can help teach a lesson there. We co-teach a lesson, or the kids will do a performance or something. It's pretty amazing. It's really especially for our summers off, just to recharge. Teaching is such a hard job that you barely make it. You're dragging yourself across the finish line in June. But it's always a wonderful thing to look forward to be like, okay, I'm putting in this work, and it's super inspirational, gives you just a global perspective. And then like I would always have my slides of my trips, showing on the Apple TV, like the screensaver. And so the kids are like, where is that at? Where are you in the desert? Oh, that was in, just like, especially when you're teaching a small community, I like opening up that tunnel vision to these kids. Like, man, this is 2019. You could do whatever you want to do.
Right.
So yeah, I highly recommend teachers take a look at the teachertravelgeo.org too. So
that's cool. We'll put that on our website and in our show notes. geeo.org.
Yep.
Excellent. We will do that. Fantastic. Well, you have another question.
One of the things I always like to ask all of the people that we interview is any books that you recommend, either that have influenced you, either personally or professionally, that you'd like to share with us.
The books that have influenced me the most lately are definitely Joe Bowler's Mathematical Mindsets. And then there's a book by Robert Dillon and Rebecca Hare called The Space, A Guide for Educators. Because in my math session, my 360 math session, you really have to kind of like to become a designer of space to see where am I going to fit all these whiteboards. So I was lucky. I took over a classroom, so I kind of like gutted it all first. I said, okay, I need it. And then where would I put my desks and what? And I love that The Space, Bob and Rebecca's book gets people started on like, well, what are the things you want your kids doing in this space? And it all stems from that. It's not about buying the stuff, but you want your kids creating, making video, and then you design around that. So I love that book because it got me into like thinking like a designer. I think, they put it in really easy to learn concepts and pictures, and it's almost like a workbook. Like you can fill out the book as you're going along to analyze your space. So that's
Rebecca Hare, she was at Bold.
She was at Bold. Yeah,
that's very cool.
Yeah, I invited her to be on the podcast in the future as well.
Yes.
That's great.
Awesome.
We'll have those links on our website as well. And I just want to say thanks again, Ed, for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. I know we have a lot of math teachers that listen to our podcast. But this isn't just for math teachers. I mean, the transitions and the music and the whiteboards can all be used in any space. Yeah, and then just the computer programming pieces of it with Bootstrap is pretty awesome. So
yeah, we're gonna have to check that out.
I know
the Bootstrap.
Yeah. Also, just to piggyback on what you said, it's not just for math. Like one of my friends, Tim Bedley, out of Southern California, he has a website called Gallery Learning, where he basically uses the whiteboard and vertical surfaces in. I think he teaches like 5th, 6th, or 7th grade, and so he's with history, with ELA, all of these things. So it's just a good space for ideas to put out there. Whatever content you have, I think is, and it just adds a little bit. Especially, you don't want to be sitting down.
No, exactly.
You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be. And I love when teachers get rid of their desks. I mean, that's just for me. That's like, what do you need a desk for?
Yeah.
If you're teaching.
Yep. I did that, and it was the best decision I ever made because I really didn't need it. If I did sit down, I'd sit down at a student's desk, but then I actually did my job and roamed around and checked for understanding. It's like the desk is like a vortex that you get stuck in and you're like, time suck.
You can. And if you need a little space, I saw a lot of teachers put just a little, they called it a conference space in the back of their room it did have a big chair and a little conference table where they could be pulling one-on-one and doing conferences with their students, but it wasn't permanent. So thank you again for taking the time today.
We're so fortunate we met you at Bold.
We've been friends on Twitter, I think. I feel like Instagram and CUE has kind of our paths have crossed, but we haven't.
And of course, 6 Degrees of Separation with John Carippo. Yeah.
With the 1 degree of Carippo. Yeah.
Pretty much everybody we talk to is like, and John Carippo. And we're like, of course, everybody knows John Carippo. Yep. But we're super excited to, to continue to hear what you're doing and, stay in touch with us and our listeners, through Twitter and Instagram. Keep us posted on what you're doing.
I will. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me. The last thing is that if people wanted to see other examples of how people are doing this idea, the hashtag 360 math is a good one. Sometimes people do hashtag math 360 also. And then Peter Liljadal's hashtag VNPS which stands for Vertical Non-Permanent Surfaces. So it took me a while to figure out what that one meant. But yeah, you can see like math teachers all over the United States and Canada doing this rad stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah,
we're big fans.
We are big fans of yours. And I don't know if you got one of our big fans when you were at Bold, but if you didn't, we'll see if we can put one in the net. All right. Well, that'll do it for our show today. We, again, appreciate your time, your talent, your energy. Keep doing what you're doing and stay in touch with us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ed.
Okay.
And we're out.
Thanks for listening to the MyTech Toolbelt podcast. If you have enjoyed listening, please rate us on Apple Podcasts or send us some feedback on our website, mytechtoolbelt.com. We would love to hear from you. This will help us deliver the content that you want to hear. Thanks, and we're out.